The train station buzzed with its usual chaos, shuffling feet, rolling suitcases, the smell of espresso drifting from the kiosk near the entrance. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, adjusting the strap of his messenger bag, wondering how he had already managed to ruin his carefully timed morning. He wasn't supposed to be here now. He should have been on the 8:45 train, seated neatly with a black coffee beside him, reviewing the presentation he was due to give at noon. Instead, thanks to an unfortunate collision with a man carrying 3 muffins and no sense of balance, his shirt carried a faint stain of cappuccino and his watch showed 9:02. The 9:05 was pulling in. With a sigh, Ethan decided fate would just have to forgive his tardiness. The carriage was crowded. Most window seats were taken, and the aisle hummed with impatient passengers negotiating luggage space. Ethan slipped into a seat by the window, opened his laptop with the kind of ritualistic care that suggested he'd done this hundreds of times before, and buried himself in his emails. He had just typed "Dear Mr. Wilkins" when someone dropped into the seat across from him. She. She wasn't what he expected to see on a dreary Wednesday morning commute. Her hair was still damp from the rain, strands clinging rebelliously to her cheek. Instead of a phone, she pulled out a thick notebook and a pencil. Her movements had a kind of absent-minded confidence, as though she'd done this many times, balancing sketchbook and pencil while the train rattled forward. Ethan tried not to stare. He really did. But after a few stolen glances, she caught him. Her eyes flicked up, amused, and a smirk curved her lips. "Do you always analyze strangers like they're unsolvable puzzles?" Heat rushed to his face. "Sorry, I wasn't. Well, maybe I was. What are you drawing?" Wordlessly, she turned the notebook toward him. It was the train carriage. Not just any carriage, but this one. The slumped man snoring against the window, the woman in a polka-dot scarf rifling through her purse, the impatient businessman whose tie hung slightly crooked, and, most embarrassingly, Ethan himself, hunched over his laptop, brow furrowed in intense concentration. "You made me look serious," he said after a pause. "Don't you?" she countered. "Touché," Ethan muttered, though his lips curved into a reluctant smile. "What's so important, anyway?" she asked, nodding toward his laptop. "Emails," he admitted. "Thrilling, I know. I'm sure they'll make a riveting portrait." She laughed, a bright, unrestrained sound that seemed far too cheerful for the cramped, gray-toned carriage. "Then maybe you should stop emailing and start noticing things. There's more here than you think." Her name was Clara. He learned this after a few minutes when she offered her hand in mock formality and nearly knocked over her pencil case. She was on her way to a small town 2 hours north, visiting her grandmother for the first time in months. "What about you?" she asked, tucking her notebook back into her bag. "Work meeting," he said. "One of those dull ones where everyone pretends to care." "And do you pretend well?" "I like to think I'm convincing." She studied him for a moment as though weighing his honesty. Then she shrugged, amused. "I bet you'd be terrible at pretending. You've got that face." "What face?" "The one that looks like you'd rather be anywhere else." Ethan chuckled despite himself. "That obvious, huh?" Painfully. For the next half hour, their conversation dipped and rose like the rhythm of the train itself. They spoke of trivial things, favorite books, the worst movies they'd endured, the peculiar charm of train stations. Clara had a way of tilting even the simplest topic into something vibrant. She teased him for his obsession with punctuality. He teased her for carrying half an art studio in her backpack. But just as he was beginning to forget the time, an announcement crackled through the speakers. "Attention passengers, due to technical issues ahead, the train will be delayed approximately 40 minutes. We apologize for the inconvenience." Groans rippled through the carriage. A man swore under his breath. Someone muttered about missed connections. Ethan closed his eyes. 40 minutes. That meeting was slipping further from reach. When he opened them, Clara was watching him with a grin. Perfect. Perfect. I'm going to be late. Exactly, she said. Now you have no excuse. Talk to me. Time shifted after that. The outside world blurred into fields and rain-streaked windows, but inside their small square of seats, something unusual unfolded. Ethan found himself telling Clara things he rarely told anyone, about the pressure of his job, the way he sometimes woke up wondering if this was really the life he wanted, the secret wish he had to write but never dared. Clara listened without judgment, sketching as he spoke. "You know," she said softly, "you sound like a man trapped on a train that never stops." He laughed. "That's accurate. And what if you just got off? Life doesn't really work like that, doesn't it?" Her eyes sparkled. "Maybe it does. Maybe you just need to miss the right train." Ethan didn't reply right away. He wasn't sure if he could. The hours passed quicker than he expected. The train, delayed and restless, finally lurched back into motion. At one point, Clara pulled out a pack of gummy bears from her bag and insisted on sharing. Ethan claimed to prefer chocolate, but somehow ate more than half the pack. At another point, the lights flickered, and for a brief second they were plunged into semi-darkness. When they came back on, Clara caught him staring again. "You do that a lot," she teased. "What? Look at me like you're trying to remember something you've never known." Ethan blinked, caught off guard by her precision. He wanted to protest, but the words never came. By the time the train slowed near her stop, Ethan realized with an unexpected pang that he didn't want this ride to end. Clara stood, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. "Well," she said lightly, "this is me." "Already? It's been 2 hours." Felt shorter. She tilted her head, studying him once more. "You're not as serious as you think, Ethan." He opened his mouth, then closed it. 100 things raced through his head. Ask for her number, ask when she'd be back, ask something. Instead, all he managed was, "It was nice meeting you." "Nice," she echoed, raising an eyebrow. "That's all?" Before he could answer, the doors hissed open. She stepped onto the platform, glanced back just once, and gave him a small, almost mischievous wave. The train pulled away, and Ethan sat frozen in his seat, laptop forgotten, wondering if he had just let the most extraordinary stranger he had ever met slip through his fingers. The train pulled into the final station, and Ethan stepped off with the weight of regret pressing against his chest. He told himself it was fine, just a fleeting encounter, a conversation with a stranger. But as he rode a taxi to his meeting, as he spoke through his presentation with mechanical precision, as colleagues shook his hand with rehearsed enthusiasm, the echo of Clara's laughter stayed with him. That night, back in his apartment, he found himself staring at the ceiling. A question gnawed at him. What if I had said more? Days passed, then a week. Work demanded his attention, and yet every crowded subway, every train whistle from a distance made him think of her. He didn't even know her last name. All he had was a memory, and the strange certainty that he wasn't meant to forget her. One rainy afternoon, Ethan boarded a train home from another dull meeting. The carriage was half empty, the kind of gloomy ride where the windows turned into mirrors. He sat down, pulled out his phone, and almost laughed at himself for scanning each face as passengers came and went. She wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. And then, "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" He froze, looked up. Clara stood there, raincoat dripping, notebook in hand. For a second, Ethan wondered if he had fallen asleep and was dreaming. "You," his voice faltered. "You're still me," she said with a grin, slipping into the seat across from him. "Surprised? That's one word." She shrugged as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "I come this way every few weeks. My grandmother's health isn't great, so I visit as often as I can. I figured I might see you again. You look like the type who repeats patterns." He laughed, shaking his head. "You make me sound predictable. Aren't you? Maybe. But I wasn't predicting this." This time, conversation flowed even easier. They picked up as though no days had passed at all. Clara showed him a few more sketches, one of her grandmother's garden, another of a cafe filled with crooked chairs. Ethan admitted he had tried to write something since their first meeting, though he refused to let her read it. "You're afraid," she said simply. "Of what?" "That if you actually try, you'll find out you're not as good as you hope. Or worse, you'll find out you are, and then you'll have no excuse to stay stuck where you are." Her words hit too close, and she knew it. Clara leaned back, smiling softly. "Relax. Everyone's afraid of something." "What about you?" Ethan asked. "I'm afraid of wasting time," she admitted after a pause. "Afraid of looking back and realizing I spent too much of it waiting for the perfect moment. That's why I draw now, even when my hands shake. That's why I get on trains without knowing who I'll sit across from." He met her gaze. Something unspoken lingered there, electric and fragile. As the train rolled on, the sun began to break through the rain clouds, painting gold streaks across the windows. For a moment, the world seemed suspended, just the two of them, the steady rhythm of wheels against the tracks, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't coincidence. But life, as always, had its interruptions. The announcement came. "Next stop, Greenwood Junction." Clara's expression shifted. She fiddled with her sleeve. "That's my stop," she said quietly. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Again. Too soon. "Clara, wait. Before you go." He hesitated, the words catching. "Can I see you again?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Depends. Are you willing to break a pattern or two? Name it. Get off at this stop with me." Ethan blinked. "What? But my apartment's 3 more stations." "Exactly." Her eyes sparkled. "So what? You'll find your way back. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll find something else." The train slowed. The doors hissed open. Passengers shuffled past. Ethan's heart pounded. 100 logical reasons screamed for him to stay seated. But logic had kept him running in circles for years. He stood. Clara's smile widened as he joined her on the platform. The town was small, quiet, and smelled faintly of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. Clara led him through winding streets, pointing out her favorite spots. The bookshop with a cat that slept in the window, the bridge where musicians played on weekends, the cafe with terrible coffee but the best blueberry muffins. They spent hours wandering, talking, laughing. At one point, Clara challenged him to sketch something with her pencil. He drew awkward lines that looked nothing like the church steeple before them, but she applauded anyway. "See? You're not hopeless?" As evening fell, lanterns lit the streets. They sat on the steps of the square, sharing another pack of gummy bears. "You know," Ethan said softly, "this morning I thought I'd spend the evening answering emails. Now I'm sitting here with you. And it feels like—" He trailed off, searching for the right word. "Like the right train finally stopped," she offered. He smiled. "Exactly." But reality couldn't be postponed forever. The last train back was approaching, and Ethan knew he had to choose. Go home, back to routine, or risk stepping off into the unknown, just as Clara had dared him. She looked at him, eyes shimmering under the streetlights. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," she whispered. "Just decide whether you'll get on that train without me." The whistle blew in the distance. Ethan took a breath. For once, he didn't overthink. He simply reached for her hand. "I'm staying," he said. Clara's fingers tightened around his, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be,